Europe has more gray wolves today than it's had in 200 years. Over 21,000 Canis lupus roam across virtually every country on the continent. Nobody built a fence to keep them out. Nobody reintroduced them from captive breeding programs. Nobody set aside vast wilderness reserves. The wolves just came back on their own, walking through farmland, crossing highways, settling in countries so densely packed with people that the idea of a wild wolf living there sounds like a joke. This is the story of the most remarkable wildlife recovery in modern European history, and the political firestorm it ignited, all because one wolf killed the wrong pony. To understand how extraordinary this comeback is, you need to grasp how thoroughly Europe tried to erase wolves from existence. This wasn't passive neglect. This was a continent-wide extermination campaign that lasted over 1,000 years. Charlemagne himself, between 800 and 813 AD, established the Louveterie, a dedicated corps of professional wolf hunters in France. That institution survived for nearly a millennium. It was abolished after the French Revolution in 1789, then brought right back in 1814 because the hatred of wolves ran that deep. Country by country, the wolves fell. England killed its last wolf in the 16th century. Scotland finished the job in 1684. Ireland held out until 1786. Denmark's last wolf died in 1772. The Netherlands wiped them out in 1869. Bavaria's final wolf was shot in 1847. Germany's last free-roaming wolf, known as the Tiger of Saarbrück, was killed in 1904. By the end of World War II, wolves had vanished from all of Central Europe and nearly all of Northern Europe. They clung on in only a handful of places: northwest Spain, southern Italy, parts of the Balkans, and the vast wetlands of Polesia on the Belarus-Ukraine border. That was it. A few thousand animals surviving on the margins of a continent that had spent centuries trying to destroy them. Then something shifted. In 1979, the Berne Convention on the Conservation of European Wildlife listed the wolf as strictly protected. In 1992, the EU Habitats Directive transformed that protection into law across the Natura 2000 network of protected areas. No more hunting. No more bounties, no more government-sponsored killing programs. And the wolves, it turned out, had been waiting. The recovery didn't happen overnight, but it happened faster than anyone predicted. Italian wolves crossed into France's Mercantour National Park in 1992. The first wolf returned to Switzerland in 1995. In the year 2000, the first wild wolf pups in 150 years were born in Germany, and this detail is almost poetic. It happened because of German reunification. In East Germany, hunting wolves had been legal. In the West, they were protected. When the wall came down and the country united, the Western protections applied everywhere. A decade later, the Eurasian wolf subspecies, Canis lupus lupus, was breeding in German forests. By 2012, the EU counted roughly 11,000 wolves across its member states. By 2022, that number had surged to over 19,000 in the EU alone, and 21,500 across all of Europe, a 58% increase in a single decade. Germany went from 1 pack in 2000 to 184 packs by 2023. Denmark, which hadn't seen a wolf in nearly 2 centuries, confirmed its first one in 2012, an animal that had died of a cancerous tumor, but a wolf nonetheless. By 2024, Denmark had 40 adults, 8 pairs, at least 6 of them raising pups. Belgium recorded its first wolf in over a century in 2018. Even the Netherlands, with 535 people per square kilometer, one of the most densely populated countries on Earth, now has at least 7 wolf packs. As one Dutch researcher put it, wolves have never previously established themselves in a country so densely populated by humans and livestock, and yet there they are. This is what makes Europe's wolf recovery fundamentally different from conservation success stories in places like Yellowstone. Nobody set aside remote wilderness. These wolves returned to a landscape dominated by highways, farms, suburbs, and cities. Researchers studying the phenomenon concluded that wolves have demonstrated an ability to recover in highly altered, multi-use landscapes on a continental scale when they're permitted to do so, confirming the extraordinary adaptability of this species. The key phrase there is, when they're permitted to do so. Europe didn't do anything extraordinary, it just stopped killing them. But recovery brings human-wildlife conflict. Wolves kill livestock, roughly 56,000 domestic animals per year in the EU, out of a total livestock population of 279 million. That works out to about 0.065% of the bloc's sheep population annually, 17 million euros in damage compensation. For individual farmers, especially small-scale herders in rural areas, those numbers aren't abstract. A wolf taking your animals is devastating, regardless of what the continental percentages look like. Preventive measures work remarkably well. Electric fences and livestock guarding dogs have reduced attacks by 47% and animals killed by 50%. On some farms where wolves had attacked up to 200 times per year, the introduction of guardian dogs reduced losses to zero without a single protected predator being killed. The EU even allows member states to fully compensate farmers for wolf damage and to reimburse the cost of fences, guard dogs, and shepherds. The tools exist. The question is whether they're being deployed fast enough to keep pace with a wolf population that's expanding its range by 25% per decade. And then there's the matter of human safety. In 18 years between 2002 and 2020, researchers found evidence of exactly 11 wolf attacks on humans across all of Europe. All non-fatal. No fatal wolf attack on a person has been recorded in Europe in the last 40 years. As one German wildlife expert put it plainly, wolves are less dangerous than wild boar, less dangerous than dogs, and less dangerous than branches falling on your head in the forest. But fear doesn't respond to statistics, and politics doesn't always respond to science. On a warm night in September 2022, in rural Lower Saxony, Germany, a gray wolf designated GW950M killed a 30-year-old pony. This wouldn't normally make headlines. Wolves kill livestock regularly, but this pony was named Dolly, and her body lay 100 meters from the home of Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission. The whole family is horribly distressed by the news, von der Leyen said. DNA analysis later linked wolf GW950M to the killing of 5 additional horses, 47 sheep, 4 cattle, and 3 goats. The wolf had actually been placed on a kill list one day before it took Dolly. What followed was what critics describe as a personal crusade. Von der Leyen began lobbying to downgrade the wolf's protection status across all of Europe. The European Commission proposed the change in late 2023. In September 2024, the EU Council voted to submit the proposal to the Berne Convention. In December 2024, the convention adopted it. By March 2025, the new status entered into force, and in June 2025, the EU Council gave final approval to amend the Habitats Directive, moving wolves from strictly protected to simply protected. 300 environmental organizations signed a letter arguing there was no scientific evidence that culling wolves reduces livestock attacks. WWF's Sabian Leemans called it a proposal that is politically motivated and not at all based on science, saying the wolf had been painted as a villain without any scientific evidence. BirdLife International warned the decision marks a shift away from science-based policymaking. Researchers noted an uncomfortable trend. Anti-wolf rhetoric increasingly relies on false claims that wolves are deliberately released or crossbred with dogs, narratives amplified by rural political parties, agricultural lobbies, and conservative movements. The wolf, in other words, has become a culture war. And yet, the wolves keep doing what wolves do. As apex predators, they hunt wild boar and deer, protecting young forests from overgrazing through trophic cascades. In Poland's Białowieża primeval forest, their mere presence changes where deer browse, allowing trees to regenerate. In France, one study estimated that wolves consuming roe deer and wild boar prevent between 2.4 and 7.8 million euros in road collision damage annually. The ecosystem, it turns out, remembers what wolves are for, even if we forgot. Luigi Boitani, chairman of the Large Carnivore Initiative for Europe and one of Europe's leading conservation biologists, may have said it best. For wolves to recover in human-dominated landscapes, humans need to accept a certain level of impact on their lives. You have to be willing to coexist. 21,000 wolves are living across Europe right now, in countries that spent centuries trying to exterminate them. They crossed no fences because none were built. They were bred in no facilities because none were needed. They simply walked back into a continent that finally, after 1,000 years of war against them, decided to stop shooting. The question now is whether that decision holds. 21,000 wolves walked back into Europe. Nobody invited them.